The big breakthrough was that I kept telling Tyven that this is cardiovascular, this practice. And so he went, all right. So he used his influence to get us an audience with people in cardiology, who then steered us to people who created a device for picking up, interestingly, something that they call reflections, which are shock waves that are sent around inside the body because of the cardiovascular system. And using this sensor, they're able to capture the shock wave, interpolate it through integral calculus, and get all kinds of important cardiovascular measurements that are gold standard level. And that includes blood pressure, diastolic and systolic blood pressure, and heartbeat. The big one is called interbeat interval heartbeats. So what they do with that is they measure the rests in between each beat. And the more rest you have in between each beat, that indicates that the parasympathetic nervous system has been activated. That's the relaxation, the wellness, so to speak, side of your autonomic nervous system. The other side, the sympathetic side, is flight or fight, and it's all that side is also associated with inflammation and fighting disease. The parasympathetic is associated with recovery, which is an basically it's a yin yang kind of operation. So when you get infected, you have an inflammatory phase where your immune system tries to corrode or burn to death whatever it is that it's dealing with. If it's a pathogen, it's going to be that. The pathogen fights back, the immune system fights back, and you have essentially a flamethrower war. Now, once the immune system burns itself out or subdues the pathogen to a certain level where it can control it, then the cooling off aspect of the immune system is activated, where you have phagocytes that come along and clean up the debris, and that's associated with this interbeat, this pause between beats. So they hooked me up to this monitor. They had me do my magic. You can see these lines right here. That was when they said go. So there's like this is a baseline, and I said go, and then you immediately see an elevation right here. You can see a sharp elevation in the beginning. I don't think it'll get any bigger. Um, and then it's above baseline and it stays there. And they're like, well, how did he do that? And then they said, stop, boom, it drops. The interbeat intervals likewise increased. So that intrigued them enough to where they went, okay, let's do some experiments. Let's get some people who do yoga. Let's get some people who do my thing, and let's do a comparison. They did that study and they found immense differences, and that all but one of my students could do this, what I'm showing right here. Whereas the yoga people they had nothing. So that was something I was really proud of, and that led to two experiments that eventually got published along with the swim paper. So that brings us to a fourth study that was done simultaneously with the two cardiovascular experiments, where we tried to see what sort of effect reflective exercise would have on brain trauma, and it was a smashing success. We had six veterans that had traumatic brain injury. And this is where I really saw how protected people are by the medical system from some opportunist who wants to come in and sell snake oil. I mean, it was so hard to get to these people, and we had to move heaven and earth. And um, I mean, I could tell a few stories here, but I won't waste time. It was kind of funny to observe it. We had to drop one veteran who was too crazy to do it. But then the five that stuck with it, all of them were able to manage their crippling traumatic brain injury symptoms, which included crippling migraine headaches, inability to sleep, PTSD, startle stuff. They were all able to manage it by feeling what I was now calling, actually, I didn't have a name for it. I just call it the pulse. And then I would use traditional, I call it the neurovascular pathway. I had these um, kind of verbose terms that I use, but I was moving toward an expression that I use now in pulsatile. But the real breakthrough came, these studies then came to the attention of a software engineer who's a graduate from UVA, and he invited me to come out to Google and give a talk. Let's see. No, I want to get back to that. He invited me to give a talk at Google, and this was, you can see the date there, 2014, March, and it was on reflective exercise. I went out, I gave a 2 hour lecture on it with, you can still see it. It's up on my website. It's also up on YouTube in general. And it was pretty successful, and I was able to get enough attention um, that it knocked me up to another level. And it also, I learned quite a bit about how digital technology was being applied to health and health management. And so Google became very interested in what I was doing. They were interested in the device that we use to measure the reflections. And one of Peter Thiel's partners from PayPal, who had joined him in, they shut PayPal down at this point and they were doing Founders Fund, heard about this lecture and then invited me to come hang with him. And actually, he just texted me about 2 weeks ago. I taught him and a group of his Founders Fund friends. I taught them for about 10 days, and at one point was thinking about the possibility of getting funded by them, but there were too many problems. It would have involved me moving out there. My wife was 8.5 months pregnant, so I decided to pass on that. Didn't really go down that road, but it did lead me to into pulsatile.